all right. Come on in, come on in, come on in, tell a friend. Yes, yes, yes. We back again. We back again. All black everything. Think was plate. Big dreams, many streams. Back at you. Moving right along. Getting right into it. When the world was black. Like you share, subscribe, with thumbs up. Like you hitchhiking. Let's go. Do your own research, but it's dropping some jewels in here. Pick them up if you don't. Hey, do your own research. Sharing this information. It's time. Step up, stand up, speak up. And it continues talking about the original man, the original people. And it continues, it says, they said we were white, not right. They said we were white. Since the 1700s, so long as any group of people anywhere in the world seemed worthy of praise, they have been described by historians as white. Doesn't matter where they found the civilization, they just called them Caucasian. If all the artwork shows brown skinned people, they called them brown Caucasians. If the artwork showed them with thick lips and curly hair, they said those people were the slaves and the white people didn't want to be in the picture. In more recent years, scientists have stopped discussing what ancient people look like. Now they use genetics and linguistics to suggest that white folks were the ones responsible. hmm Pay attention to the vernacular, the verbiage, this twisted English language they got all the world speaking. Don't let them tell you that they don't see race. Despite anything that they say to the contrary, white people have always seen race. How could they not? In the black and brown world, you gotta notice that you're the odd one out. And as soon as they realized how to dominate the world, race became their rallying point. Spreading civilization was just another way of referring to the spread of white global domination. Keywords. You gotta understand it. And so they taught that the civilization was the dominion of white people. If anyone else on earth had it, they must have learned it from white people. Fortunately, they said very few non-white people actually had it. As Charles Signabo says in his 1907 History of Ancient Civilization, quote, almost all civilized people belong to the white race. The people of other races have remained savage or barbarian like the men of prehistoric times. Yet, Signabos, excuse me, messed that name all the way up, immediately follows this statement with the following. He says, it is within the limits of Asia and Africa that the first civilized people had their development. The Egyptians in the Nile Valley, the Chaldeans in the plains of the Euphrates. They were peoples of sedentary, sedentary and peaceful pursuits. Their skin was dark, their hair short and thick, lips strong. Nobody knows their origin of exactness, and scholars are not agreed on the name to give them, some terming them Cushites or Hamites. It's patiently absurd. He's saying only white people are civilized, even though the people who invented civilization are black skinned, woolly haired, and big lipped. We don't know what kind of people they were, but we know, excuse me, but we're sure they weren't black. The poppycock, hogwash, all that. And this is how ridiculous some of their claims sounded even then. Black historians of the time were constantly incensed by these preposterous claims. Yet they felt no shame in asserting that the Mayans, Egyptians, Ethiopians, Indians, Chinese, and Japanese were originally white. In fact, historians once taught that not only was Europe the cradle of modern civilization, it was the birthplace of humanity itself. Lies, lies, lies. Damn. In other words, Africa gave the world nothing, and black people were simply the bastard offspring of the glorious white race. Fortunately, we know that the entire human race started with black people. The only question is then what happened? The science of race. Where do the different races come from? I've heard a lot of people say, well, if everyone came from black people, where did all the different races come from? And we can consult with pioneering black historian John G. Jackson for some insight into this matter in his 1939 classic, Ethiopia and the Origin of the Civilization. He wrote, Peace and love to the king, the ancestor, John G. Jackson. He says most history texts, especially the ones on ancient history, start off by telling us that there are either three, four, or five races of man. But that of those races, only one has been responsible for civilization, culture, progress, and all other good things. The one race is, of course, the white race, and particularly that branch of said race known as the Nordic or Aryan. The reason for this is obvious. The writers of these textbooks are, as a rule, Nordics, or so consider themselves. However, prejudice alone will not account for this sort of thing. There is a confusion among historians and anthropologists concerning the proper classification of races, and this confusion is used by biased writers to bolster up their preconceptions. In other words, white writers use the general public's misunderstanding of race to support their bias in favor of white people. Whites are portrayed as the authors of all that is good, while everything else is murky and unclear. Jackson continues. It is therefore necessary that we discuss the subject of race classification in a rational manner before proceeding further. The earlier scientific classifications of the varieties of human species were geographical in nature. The celebrated naturalist Linnaeus, 1708 to 1778, for instance, listed four races according to continent named European, white, two, African, black, three, Asiatic, yellow, three or four, American, red. Blumenbach in 1775 added a fifth type. Blumenbach in 1775 added a fifth type, the oceanic or brown race. This classification is still used in some grammar school geographies, where the races of man are tabulated as Ethiopian, black, Caucasian, white, American, red, Mongolian, yellow, and Malayan, brown, five of them. During the year 1800, the French naturalist Cuvier announced that the hypothesis that all ethnic types were traceable to Ham, Shem, and Japhet, the three sons of Noah. After that date, race classifications developed into an amazing contest, a struggle which still raises. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson said. Peace out, shout out to the king, Dr. Claude Anderson. It's a race. That's why they call it racism. By developed, excuse me, by 1873, Haeckel had found no less than 12 distinct races of mankind. And to show the indefatigable nature of his research, he annexed 22 more races a few years later, bringing the grand total of human types to 34. Where one anthropologist finds three racial types, another can spot 33 without the least difficulty. In other words, the racial categories are determined by whoever is defining them. Yet, consistently, no matter how mixed up the black, brown, red, and yellow masses were at the bottom, it was clear who was on top. The classification of race, however, regardless of how abundantly they disagreed with each other as to the correct groupings of human types, were of unanimous accord in the belief that the white peoples of the world were far superior to the darker races. And we just know that's just, you know, nonsense. But that's what they taught the world. And that world domination, starting with the religion, you better understand it. When the world was black, all black everything, think it's black, big things, many streams, like you share, subscribe it, thumbs up like you're hitchhiking. We're gonna leave it right there and we're gonna come right back. Peace and love. Appreciate y'all for checking us out. As always, as you come back, spread that love and information. Mm-hmm.